That stick of butter you just spread on your toast, it might be 21% water. Not cream, not milk fat, water. And that's just the beginning of what's wrong with the butter aisle in America right now. Because while you've been grabbing whatever's cheapest or whatever has the prettiest packaging, food scientists, professional chefs, and dairy obsessives on Reddit have been quietly ranking these brands. The results are uglier than you'd think. Some of the most trusted names on the shelf are bulked up with water, whipped with air, or cut with oils that have no business being near a churn. Meanwhile, a few underdog brands are quietly outperforming the giants for half the price. So before you butter another piece of toast, let's talk about the 5 brands you should leave on the shelf, and the 5 that are actually worth your money. Let's start with the worst offender, because honestly, this one shocked even longtime butter buyers. Land O'Lakes is the brand most Americans grew up with. It's everywhere. Your grandma used it, your mom used it, and yet head over to r/cooking or r/askculinary on Reddit. You'll find thread after thread of professional cooks quietly admitting they stopped buying it years ago. The complaint? It tastes flat. There's a reason. Standard Land O'Lakes salted butter clocks in at exactly the federal minimum of 80% butterfat. That means up to 20% of what you're paying for is water and milk solids. European-style butters routinely hit 82% to 85%. That difference might sound small, but in a croissant, a buttercream, or even a simple pan sauce, it's the difference between rich and rubbery. One pastry chef on a Serious Eats forum put it bluntly. She said, "Using Land O'Lakes in laminated dough is like trying to paint with watered-down paint." Then there's whipped butter, and I'm looking specifically at brands like Breakstone's Whipped and the whipped tubs from store brands that mimic them. Whipped butter is butter that's been beaten with nitrogen gas to make it spreadable straight from the fridge. Sounds convenient, right? Here's the catch. You're literally paying butter prices for air. Consumer Reports tested whipped butters years ago and found that by volume, you're getting roughly 30% to 40% less actual butter than the label implies. A tub that looks like a pound is closer to 10 or 11 ounces of real product. Bakers hate it because the inconsistent density wrecks recipes. And on Twitter, food writer Kenji Lopez Alt has gone on record multiple times saying whipped butter is one of the biggest scams in the dairy aisle. Convenient? Sure. Worth it? Absolutely not. Now, here's where it gets a little controversial. Country Crock. Technically, the original Country Crock tub isn't even butter, it's a vegetable oil spread. And that's printed right on the label, but most shoppers never read it. It's mostly soybean and palm oil, whipped with water and milk powder. A 2022 Reddit thread in r/nutrition went semi-viral when someone posted side-by-side photos of the ingredient list versus the marketing, and people lost their minds. The texture mimics butter, the packaging looks rustic and farmhouse, but you're essentially eating margarine in a costume. Cardiologists have flagged the palm oil content for years, and chefs roll their eyes at the idea of cooking with it. If you want butter, buy butter. If you want margarine, fine, but don't pay butter prices for an imitation that hides what it actually is. Speaking of imitations, let's talk about I Can't Believe It's Not Butter sticks. The branding is iconic, the jingle is burned into millennial brains, but the product itself? It's a plant oil blend with somewhere around 38% to 45% fat, depending on the version, and the rest is water, salt, and emulsifiers. Try baking cookies with these sticks. Go ahead. Bakers on YouTube have done the experiment dozens of times, and the results are always the same. Flat, greasy, sad cookies that spread into puddles because there's not enough actual fat to hold structure. One viewer comment under a King Arthur baking video summed it up perfectly. They wrote, "I followed the recipe exactly and ended up with butter-flavored Frisbees. If a brand can't even perform in a basic chocolate chip cookie, why is it in your fridge?" And the 5th brand to skip might surprise you because it's marketed as premium. Generic store brand European-style butters, the ones labeled imported but sold for suspiciously cheap at big box stores. The trick here is that European style only describes the fat percentage. It doesn't guarantee European origin, traditional churning, or quality milk. Some of these store brands are made domestically with mass-produced cream and just labeled European style for marketing. A 2023 thread on r/cheese broke down how shoppers tested 4 different so-called European butters from major chains. found 2 of them tasted virtually identical to standard American butter, despite costing 30% more. So if you're paying a premium for the European label, make sure the brand is actually European. Otherwise, you're funding a marketing department. Now for the good news. 5 butters that are absolutely worth every penny, and most of them aren't the ones you'd expect. Number 1, Kerrygold. Yes, the gold foil Irish butter you've definitely seen. The reason it deserves the hype is real. Kerrygold cows are grass-fed for most of the year, which gives the butter that deep yellow color from natural beta-carotene. The fat content sits around 82%, the flavor is grassy and rich, and chefs from Gordon Ramsay to home cooks on TikTok have gone on record praising it. Costco shoppers buy it in bulk for a reason. It's the gold standard of accessible premium butter. Number 2, Vital Farms pasture-raised butter. Vital Farms built its reputation on eggs, but their butter is quietly excellent. It comes from pasture-raised cows on small American farms. The butter fat is high, and the cream is slow churned. Reddit users in r/dairy and r/cooking consistently rank it just below Kerrygold, sometimes above it for baking because the moisture content is more controlled. It's pricier, but for special occasions, croissants, compound butters, or finishing a steak, it's worth the splurge. Number 3, one most Americans walk past without noticing, Plus. It's an American butter, but it's made in the European style with 82% butterfat. It's been the secret weapon of professional pastry chefs for over 30 years. Bakeries from Brooklyn to San Francisco use it because it's reliable, it laminates beautifully, and it's actually cheaper than Kerrygold at most grocery stores. If you've never tried it, you're missing the butter your favorite bakery is probably using right now. Number 4, Trader Joe's cultured salted butter. Yes, a store brand made the good list. Cultured butter is fermented before churning, which gives it a tangy, complex flavor that mass-produced butter just can't replicate. Trader Joe's version is sourced from European producers, sells for around $4 a stick pair. Food writers at Bon Appetit have repeatedly named it one of the best budget cultured butters in America. It's the kind of thing that makes plain toast taste like a restaurant meal. Number 5, the dark horse, Organic Valley Pasture Butter. It's only released seasonally from spring through fall when the cows are actually on grass. The butter fat is 84%. The flavor is unbelievably rich, and farmers themselves on agricultural forums have praised Organic Valley for paying small dairies fairly. It's the rare case of a butter that's better for you, better for the cows, better for the farmers, and genuinely better tasting. So here's the takeaway. Butter isn't just butter. The difference between a flat, watery stick and a rich, golden one is the difference between a meal that's fine and a meal you remember. Next time you're at the store, flip the package over. Check the butterfat percentage. Look for cultured, pasture-raised, or 82% or higher. Skip the air, skip the water, skip the imposters. Your toast deserves better, and honestly, so do you. Now, before you head to the store armed with this new knowledge, let's go a little deeper, because there are details about butter that even some serious home cooks don't know. And these details can change the way you cook, bake, and eat for the rest of your life. Let's talk about butterfat percentages for a moment, because this single number tells you almost everything you need to know. Standard American butter, by federal regulations set back in 1923, is required to contain at least 80% butterfat. That's the floor, not the ceiling. European butter, by contrast, typically clocks in between 82% and 86%. Plus, made by Keller's Creamery in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, hits 82%. Kerrygold lands around 82% as well. Vermont Creamery's cultured butter pushes 86%. That extra 2% to 6% doesn't sound like much, but in baking it's the difference between a flaky croissant and a sad, soggy one. Pastry chef Claire Saffitz has spoken openly about why she refuses to test recipes with low-fat American butter. The water content sabotages laminated doughs before they ever hit the oven. Speaking of water, let's address the elephant in the dairy aisle. Cheap butter can contain up to 18% water. When you melt it in a pan, you'll see it. It sputters, it foams aggressively, it evaporates and leaves you with a fraction of what you started with. Premium butter melts smoother, browns more evenly, and produces that nutty, almost caramel aroma, the French call beurre noisette. If you've ever wondered why your brown butter sauce never quite tastes like the one at the restaurant down the street, this is why. The chef isn't more talented than you. The chef is using better butter. Now here's something almost no one talks about. The color of butter is not an accident, and it's not always natural. Real grass-fed butter gets its deep yellow, almost orange tint from beta-carotene, the same pigment that makes carrots orange. Cows eating fresh pasture in spring and summer produce milk loaded with it. Cows eating grain and silage in confinement produce pale, almost white butterfat. So what do big manufacturers do? They add annatto, a natural dye from the seeds of the achiote tree, to make their butter look richer than it actually is. Land O'Lakes, Challenge, and several store brands have been doing this for decades. It's legal, it's disclosed in fine print, but it's also a tell. If a butter needs to be dyed to look golden, the cows weren't eating grass. There's also the issue of how butter is stored and shipped, which most consumers never think about. Butter absorbs odors like a sponge. If it sits next to onions, garlic, or strong cheeses in a warehouse cooler for weeks, it picks up those flavors. This is one reason why fresh, small batch butter from a creamery you can actually visit tastes cleaner than something that's been trucked across 3 states and warehoused for a month. Vermont Creamery, founded in 1984 by Allison Hooper and Bob Reese, built their reputation specifically on short supply chains and quick turnover. Their butter goes from churn to shelf in days, not weeks. Let's also revisit the question of salt, because this trips people up constantly. Salted butter typically contains between 1% and 2% salt. But the salt isn't just for flavor, it's a preservative. Salted butter lasts longer in the fridge, sometimes up to 5 months. Unsalted butter starts to go rancid in about 3 weeks. That's why bakers prefer unsalted. It's fresher, and it lets them control the salt in the recipe precisely. But for everyday eating, for spreading on toast or melting onto a baked potato, a high-quality salted butter, especially one finished with flaky sea salt like Malden, is genuinely transformative. The French butter Bordier, made in St. Malo by Jean-Yves Bordier since 1985, is hand-paddled with crystals of fleur de sel and sells for nearly $30 a pound in specialty shops. People line up for it. They line up for butter. And here's a counter-argument worth addressing, because I know some of you are thinking it, isn't all this fuss just food snobbery? Isn't butter just butter at the end of the day? I'd push back on that gently. The price difference between the worst butter on the shelf and one of the best is often only $2 or $3 per pound for something you might use every single day on toast, in eggs, on vegetables, in cookies. That's pennies per serving. We spend more upgrading coffee, upgrading olive oil, upgrading salt. Butter deserves the same scrutiny, especially because the gap in quality is so dramatic and so easy to taste. There's also a health angle worth mentioning briefly. Grass-fed butter contains significantly more omega, 3 fatty acids, more conjugated linoleic acid, and more vitamin K2 than grain-fed butter. A 2008 study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that populations consuming high-fat dairy from pasture-raised animals had measurably lower rates of heart disease than those consuming conventional dairy. That's not a license to eat a stick a day, but it does suggest that the type of butter matters as much as the quantity. One last practical tip before we wrap: store your good butter properly. Wrap it tightly in wax paper or foil. Never leave it open in the fridge, because it will absorb every odor in there. If you use it daily, consider a French butter crock, that little ceramic vessel that keeps butter spreadable on the counter for up to 30 days using nothing but a water seal. They've been used in Brittany since the 1800s, and they work exactly as well today as they did then. So when you walk down that dairy aisle next week, remember, you're not just buying a stick of fat. You're buying the result of how those cows were raised, what they ate, how the cream was handled, how long it was cultured, how much water was whipped into it, and how honest the label really is. Pay attention, read the back, trust your taste buds, and give your toast, your croissants, your scrambled eggs, and yourself the butter you actually deserve.